we'll go ahead with whatever we've been discussing. We defined what is a nonlinear space, and number of examples actually we have covered up. Broadly, if you look at, we said there is some finite dimensional nonlinear spaces and nonlinear spaces coming out of sequences and nonlinear spaces coming out of functions. So we can call that to be function space. And then nonlinear space coming out of measurable functions. Okay, we call it as LP. And the important inequality which helping in reducing the defined space is actually a vector space, as well as proving the triangle inequality was Holders, and Minkowski follows from that. So these are the things that we done. But before going ahead, there are a few quick remarks. That is the following. One is that something which you are very familiar called inner product space. So you take a space X, this is a vector space, and on that you define an inner product. So this is called an inner product space. Usually abbreviated as IPS. Now this inner product space, you might have also again learned this typical example of inner product space is R2 with inner product defined as x1, x2, inner product with y1, y2 is x1 with y1 plus x2 with y2 and then take the summation. That is x1 into y1 plus x2 into y2. Maybe I'll quickly write it. So in R2, he would have defined this inner product as x1 y1 plus x2 y2. And in case if the same thing happens in C2, and these are complex numbers, then the difference it creates is you take y1 bar and s2. The second coordinate you will take that. So more generally, if you remember in Rn or in Cn, the inner product of x with y. So x here I mean n tuples and y here I mean n tuples is defined by xi yi bar. If it is a complex number, it's the complex conjugate that we are speaking. And using this inner product, you have already defined a length which is given by this. So you consider inner product of x with x. I hope you could recollect what is the definition of inner product. So it says that if I take inner product of x with itself, it's always bigger than or equal to 0. That's also clear from the expression what you have written. But in general also, you demand that as a definition. So this is a positive non-negative real number. So I can take the square root. And I will define this as my norm. This you might have again done in your, at least in the plane case. If you take the same x instead of y, if you take the same x in R2, you note that it is nothing but x1 square. Just substitute here. And you can see it is x1 into x1 bar, that is mod x1 square, and x2 with x2 bar, which is mod x2 square. And you have to take the square root. So square root of x1 square plus x2 square. That's what you call it as the length in R2. So now this, what we are saying now is that if at all you have some inner products, you can define the same thing, whatever you did for R2. And the obvious next step is to check whether it is actually a norm. So is this a norm? That means what is given to us, a vector space and an inner product on it. And we are defining a norm through this definition. And we are asking the question, is it a norm? Can you check non-negativity is immediate? That follows from the inner product definition. And scalar multiple, you have to multiply alpha here as well as alpha here. So you have to take alpha here as well as alpha here when I take alpha here. Then you know the inner product, it is linear in the first variable, conjugate linear in the second variable. So if I pull the alpha out, you get an alpha from the first coordinate and alpha bar from the second coordinate. So it becomes mod alpha square. And if I take the square root, you will get the mod alpha into norm inner product of x with x, and which is norm. So you get positive homogeneous. And next thing what we need to look at is triangle inequality. Of course, the definiteness also we can check. If norm of x is 0, then inner product of x with 0. And remember, this is what you expected in the case of inner product also. Inner product of any element with itself has to be bigger than or equal to 0. And if it is 0, then x has to be 0. And hence, if I say that norm x is 0, the square root of this is 0. And hence, this number inner product with x with x itself is 0, and you get x equal to 0. So all the things could be verified very quickly. And what one thing remains to check is the triangle inequality. And do you remember how do you check the triangle inequality in an inner product space? If I say the name that most of you will remember, you call something as Cauchy-Schwarz inequality. So I'm writing it for you. With appropriate condition, can you recollect what it says? It says inner product of x with y, this modulus is less than or equal to. This is inside the inner product space. Precisely speaking, this right hand side, I can actually write it as this is this. So when you have studied only inner product space, you may not know what this norm, but now we know, so I'm using this. Otherwise, there it says the following. So if I take inner product of x with y, and I look at the modulus value, it's less than or equal to taking inner product of x with x itself with the square root, and y with itself with the square root. And now I want you to notice the following. We had this Holder's inequality. Just recollect what is the Holder's inequality. And take a special case, because remember Holder's inequality says something about norm of x, y is less than or equal to p norm of x into q norm of y. There if I take say p equal to q is equal to 2, a special case, when p is equal to 2, q automatically becomes 2. What you get is the following. In special case, it says that right now I am doing it for Rn, and of course you can do it for sequences. And we know that this is true for even general setup. Right now we are discussing on Rn, so maybe restrict to Rn and see that what it means. What is this 2 now? You can check again, it's precisely inner product of x squares, xi squares, with a square root. And this is square root of summation yi squares. Now what I want to say is that I can check the triangle inequality of the inner product space using this special case of the Holder's inequality. Okay. Can you see that this Holder's inequality is actually saying the Cauchy-Schwarz? In your definition, inner product of x with y is x1 into y1 plus x2 into y2, which is what this norm is. Right. And now, so once you understood, in fact, this is just the summation of modulus terms, and this is modulus of those summation. Okay, so this whatever you see here, this is actually less than or equal to this, because the modulus is outside here. Inside terms are with summation. Here, modulus is already inside with the summation. Right. Anyway, this is that is true. So this is less than or equal to this, and Holder's inequality says this, and so you get that will be less than or equal to this right hand side. That's how you get the proof. Okay. So you can check. So now we want to quickly see how the triangle inequality. What is that triangle inequality that I need to check? In the case of inner product space, I defined a norm. I of course need to check the following. So triangle inequality of norm defined through inner product space. This is what we are trying to look at. That means I need to start with norm of x plus y. I need to end up showing that it is less than or equal to norm x plus norm y, if the norm is coming from the inner product. And this is again, keep in your mind, since the norm is defined through the square root, to avoid all the square roots, you always start with the inequality with a square, so that it's just inner product of x with x. So just write it. Is what it says. And expand it. So you get inner product of x with x. This is the standard expand it in the inner product space. This properties, you know. This is x with y. This is y with x. This is y with y. And notice that this actually I can write it as this is norm x square. And this is norm y square. And f, and remember I need to prove an inequality. So is there any natural easy inequality that this value has to be less than or equal to modulus? So I can use the modulus of inner product xy. Similarly, I can use modulus of inner product yx. And that's the one way. Or you can also go through a real part, and real part is less than or equal to that. Also you can use in the case of complex. Notice that inner product of xy, this is inner product of yx. So in the case of real, they are same. So it is 2 times. In the case of complex, it will be 2 times real. And then again, I will write it as 2 times real part of a complex number is less than or equal to modulus value of the complex number. So finally, I will end up 2 times modulus of this. Is it clear? So these 2 things together becomes this. Are you all able to follow? That's it now. Now you go back what you want. You look at the Holder's inequality. I can write this as 2 times norm x into norm y plus norm y square. So I am using Holder's special case p equal to q. And that's it. So we got what we needed. So this now see that. So both sides you got an inequality what you want. So norm of x plus y whole square is less than or equal to norm x plus norm y whole square. So taking square root both sides, you get the required inequality. So that proves the triangle inequality. And so now, what is that we are actually observing is the following. The moment if you have a vector space on which if you have a inner product, you can immediately define a norm, and I don't need to verify anything, it automatically becomes a norm. Is this point clear? Right. So if the norm is coming from an inner product, then all it says is that it's already by the property of the inbuilt and the special case of Holder's inequality, which is Cauchy-Schwarz, I get the triangle inequality also. So if I define an arbitrary norm, many places maybe I will check, is it actually coming from an inner product? If I could show that, then it becomes a norm automatically. If it is not so, then I have to check for triangle inequality and all other properties. Okay. So the one line that it says is that every inner product defines a norm, and hence every inner product space is also a norm-linear space. Right. So this is what it says. Of course, there are obvious other questions. That is it true that every norm-linear space is actually coming from an inner product? And the answer is no. And we will soon see these things. Right. So this is the first one that we want to accommodate, something that you already learned. Second thing, yesterday we did, is there any doubt up to this? If it is so, you can go ahead with something what we did yesterday. Yeah, Gaurav. Okay, you're saying no problem. Fine. Okay then. So yesterday we have observed something when we are defining the LP spaces. It was the norm we have defined, and that norm was having all the properties excluding the definiteness. That is, if norm of f is 0, it need not imply f equal to 0. That's where we defined f equal to g almost everywhere. So f need not be identically equal to 0, but f is 0 almost everywhere. So this is a standard case. And this is again a recurring theme in maths many places. So you take all the definition requirements of norm, excluding the definiteness. That means norm, if x is 0, norm x equal to 0, that you will get it. But if norm x is 0, whether x is 0, that property you don't demand. So excluding that part, if you write the rest of properties that you demand, then such a function is called a semi-norm. Okay, so write your own definition. So it asks for norm x to be bigger than or equal to 0. So I'll use it with a different notation. Again, the space is vector space, and I call P as a function from x to R, satisfying all the properties. That is, P of x, you want it to be bigger than or equal to 0. This I want it for all x in x. And P of alpha x, you want it to be mod alpha times P of x. And P of x plus y, you want it to be less than or equal to P of x plus P of. Of course, here alpha is coming from the field, and here x and y are coming from the space. So this is called the seminorm. And is it clear that yesterday what we defined as in the case of measurable functions, we define norm p. That's integral of mod of d mu over the space x the power p to the power 1 by p. And can you see that this we have observed yesterday? This is actually a seminorm. Yes. So whatever we did there is not just something very special to that instant. In fact, wherever you come across such a thing, you can always get a norm from this seminorm. So all that we need to do is the following: that take a seminorm. The real problem is that there may be two. There may be an element x for which p of x may be 0, but x need not be 0. So I want to consider all of them to be kind of 0. So I have to create a equivalence class. Okay. So can somebody suggest what is the natural equivalence class that I can think of? So I collect all those x for which p of x is 0, and I consider that as a set. And that set, through that set, I will define the equivalence class. Okay. So can I ask what is the idea? This is a standard process. Remember, whether you have, if you have a semi group, you will do the same. If you have a semi ring, you will do the same. And you might have done the similar thing in a metric space. Call it a pseudo metric. We also did the same. So wherever things are violating, you group them and call them to be 0. That's all you will do. Okay. Yeah, Namasivayam.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what you will do, such case?
Like given a seminorm, how to
get a norm? Yeah, or how to go about it? You look at all those points where the p of x is. See, the only problem is if p of x is 0, you don't get x equal to 0.
Yes, sir.
So what are all the x for which p of x equal to 0? All of them you want to call it as 0. That's the only way, right?
Yes.
So what you do? Okay, you can mute yourself. So I'll consider a set of all x in this vector space such that p of x is actually 0. Okay. If this is a singleton 0, then it is a norm. But since it is given to be a seminorm, it may not be a singleton set. It may be containing more elements. So I'll call this as n. And this is the subset of x. This is a vector space. So what do you naturally demand for n to be? So remember, this is a process, a repeating process in maths. See, you found out a subset of a vector space. What is it that you will expect? What is the minimum thing that you will demand? Chetan?
Sir, x upon n.
No. What is the minimum thing? X upon n, you're saying. What is that? The quotient?
Yes.
So, okay. So, if you're familiar, quotient. But can I always take a quotient with any set?
Not in general, sir. Not necessarily.
In general. But so, what is that you want the minimum? So where you can take the quotient, when you can consider the quotient of a group? Atanu?
I think it's a cost.
Huh? No, when you can take a quotient of a group. No, quotient of a group when you can take.
Yeah, it should be a normal subgroup.
Yeah, so it's not only subgroup, something special you will look at. Somebody writing on the screen. Okay, Deepanjana, what you will do in the case of ring when you can take the quotient?
It should be an ideal.
Yeah. So this is a standard thing. You look at number of places. I think somebody writing on the screen. You can clear it up. And so it's this is a vector space. X is a vector space, and N is some subset. And after taking the quotient, this may be our new vector space. If I want it to be a vector space, this N should have a nice structure. Okay. So Atanu was saying closed, but even before that, just as a vector space, I want to make sure that it is a subspace. Then I can take the quotient very easily. Okay. Is N N is a subspace? Is N a subspace? Yeah. Prachi, why it is a subspace?
Sir, because we have 0 is there in N, and
Okay.
if we had two functions which are identically 0, then their sum is also identical.
No, not two functions, two elements in N.
Yeah, two elements in N. Then if P of X is 0 and P1 of X is 0, P of X1 is 0 and P of X2 is 0, then their sum is also 0. And if we
Why is that?
if we
Why
do
is
the
that? Why is that? Why P of
So
X1 plus
because
X2?
X1 and X2 are the roots of Px.
Roots. What is P?
Zeros.
Okay. No, P of X is 0. P of Y is also 0. But
Yes,
why
sir.
P of X plus Y is 0? Yeah, Ritesh?
Actually, it's Px is following the property of triangle inequality Px of
Okay.
Px plus y less than equal to Px plus Py. So
Yes.
it will be less than equal to 0 and greater than equal to 0, so is equal to 0.
Yes. So use the first property and the third property. And this right hand side, this is also 0 and this is also 0. Px is 0, Py is 0. So P of X plus Y has to be 0. Prachi, clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now I thought somebody might say that immediately it is kernel of P. Remember, we are not assuming P to be any linear. It's only some kind of additive. So look at the third property. It actually says that some kind of sub additive, not the additive. It is sub, less than or equal to. If it is equal, then it is some sense saying about the additive part of the linearity condition. Okay. So check that actually N is a subspace. Okay. So check that this is actually a subspace, and hence I can define immediately the. I can take the quotient, and now I can define the norm. So how do I define? This is an equivalence class. So any element here, for any element here, which is an equivalence class, I need to define a norm. So how it is defined? Srijana, or who else is there? Only similar people.
Sir?
Yeah. So how do I define the norm of this equivalence class?
It should be ideally equal to calculate norm for any element.
Any
It
element
should
in
be
this.
the same.
So in this case, what is the norm? The norm you use is P. Yeah. So it is P of X.
P of X. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but first of all, you need to check it is actually well defined. That means within the equivalence class, whether you take X or Y, P of X should be same as P of Y. That you need to check it. That also I leave it as it's a simple exercise. We can check. Okay. Check. Well defined. Okay. Once it is well defined and it all satisfies the, and also check it is a norm. So that gives the conclusion. If you have on a vector space, if you have a semi-norm, then I can define this. So I can consider X with this quotient and this as the norm, which is actually some P of X. This is a nonlinear space. So is that clear? This is what yesterday we did in abstract, in a particular case. Now we are doing in an abstract sense. So there in the corresponding n equivalence class was almost everywhere. You get an almost everywhere sense in the yesterday's example. So if you have a seminorm, then I can always create a norm. So as somebody was suggesting that you need some kind of closeness, as of now, before even defining norm, I don't need any topological property. So just vector space structure discussion is actually enough for me. Yeah, Tanu, you want to say something?
Sir, I think to prove the definiteness of that norm actually,
Yeah.
we need closeness actually.
Which one?
Post of n is a closed subspace. We need that to only show that that norm you have defined. That's to prove definiteness of that norm.
Why?
So, like, so if you take
No,
any
close with, first of all, close with respect to what?
okay. So
I have only vector space.
okay, yeah.
So there is
So
nothing
first
else
of
I
all, we
have.
should have started with non-linear space, then we can define.
Yes. If you already have at least a vector space or at least a topological space, then I can ask for some kind of closeness.
Okay.
But I'm having only vector space structure. No, you are right. Maybe with something else in your mind. Wherever you come across, you will define through in terms of infimum. So infimum should attain or some kind of closeness is necessary. Right now, we don't have anything. Just I'm defining P of X.
Okay. Sir.
Yeah. Okay. So there is one more thing that most of you were discussing in your discussion session place. That is the following. Can I always define? So X is just a vector space. Is it possible to define a norm? Always is the question. So can I always define the norm? What do you think? So the process is the following. Yeah, Indrajyoti? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, for any vector space using John's lemma, we can say that it has a basis element.
Correct.
And any element of the vector space can be written as finite linear combination of that basis elements.
Correct.
And we can define some type of norm using that coefficients of that basis.
Why some type? Can you make it precise? You can do it.
Supremum of this
So I
coefficient.
call it as the basis as say something like basis is B1, B2, Bn. They are elements of the vector space. Or let's say we call it as x1, x2, xn. Or v1, v2, vn is the basis.
Yes, sir.
And any x, if I start in x, I can write it as a linear combination, finite linear combination. So it will be
Yes, sir.
x equal to alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2 up to alpha n vn.
Yes.
Now
Then,
you need to define what is norm of x.
Norm of x, I will define like modulus of a1 plus modulus of a2. That is coefficient modulus of coefficients and take the sum.
Right. Is that all clear to you, all of you? Yes. Good. So what he has defined, can you see that he actually took some kind of one norm? Yes, he took some kind of one norm, but you have more freedom. You can even take a two norm if you want. That means those coefficient squares you can take and then take a square root. That's like two norm. So you can replicate many other things, whatever you have. Only thing is taken granted and we are using very powerfully is the John's lemma, giving the conclusion that you always have a basis. Usually it is called as a Hamel basis. You can write any vector as a finite linear combination. By linear combination, we always mean a finite linear combination. So the only one problem that you need to check, as in the case of whatever we define now, is that if I take X, it will have a linear combination, and Y, it will have a linear combination. And so X plus Y will have the same linear combination. You have to show that it's not, there won't be any other finite linear combination. So if you know the Hamel basis definition, then you will get the uniqueness. And hence the way that you are writing the norm is always give you the norm that you want. So I just write it for the sake of reference. So you go to Zone's lemma, you get a Hamel basis. So any X will be just a finite linear combination of Vi. I'm calling this as V alpha. Alpha belongs to some index set. This is only a finite linear combination. Remember, we have to be careful. It will be very precisely writing. It need not be always first finitely many vectors linear combination. It could be anything. So better way to deal with, to write this expression is that I write summation. This is some alpha I Vi, where I is coming from some finite subset of this index set. So cardinality of F is finite. Okay. And now define the norm of X as summation mod alpha. Check that this is actually a norm. So again, so we could show that given any X, if you define, so if I call this with a name, so it is coming from the Hamel basis HB, then so you can define so this is actually an nonlinear space. Okay, right. Now we'll ask some quick questions which you can actually look at, and then you can discuss. You can in the discussion session also before going further. Can I think set of all n by n matrices with entries are coming from say R? Is it a vector space? Yeah, okay. Most of you are aware of it. And of course it has a norm, and hence you will have a norm. But can you also, how many of you can think of a norm on this space? Vaishnavi? Yeah. Yeah. Can you think of a norm?
Yeah. You can take like A11. Like
yeah, this matrix is of course A11 defined by Aij. Yeah.
I'm saying like you can take the first element of the matrix.
Will that be a norm? So you are saying that this
Like absolute value of first element.
Okay, so you have Aij. So this norm of this you are taking absolute value of A1. Is it what you're saying?
Yeah, it need not be wrong.
Okay, why?
Because it like
Why it is not a norm? Which property is not satisfying? Non-negativity is clear.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it will.
Yes, is it positive homogeneous?
Yes, it will satisfy both conditions.
Yes. Yes. Triangle inequality?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I
What about
got it.
definiteness?
Yes.
Now, if num of this is 0, can you conclude Aij is 0? What is 0 here?
Yeah, then only for
No, in n by n matrices, what is 0?
Sir, absolute sum of all entries.
Yes?
Absolute sum of all the entries.
No, but this one, is it a norm?
No, sir, it's not.
It is not a norm because?
Definiteness is not satisfied.
Okay, okay. So you are saying that you take all ing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And can you see that again you can replicate? So all that you did is that you consider the matrix as array instead of array. I can put them as a single row, right? And I can consider this to be a vector in Rn square. And you can bring all those norms here and still it will be valid because the addition is just coordinate-wise addition only in case of matrix. Is that clear? So all those norms in Rn square, you can bring it here. So check that. We'll go ahead. Does it also imply that nothing special about only square matrices? I can do this also. Not only square matrices, even for rectangular matrices I can do. Even for rectangular matrices, I can do this. So check that also. Okay, you can naturally, immediately you can define certain norms using that. Okay. So the set of all matrices with this appropriate norm, this is also a norm linear space. So I am leaving that. So M n by m, not only R, any field if you take, and then appropriate norm. Okay. We can continue to call to be P norms. This is like one norm here. It's like power 1, so it is 1. We can define all the P norms. It's nothing, not difficult to check. Right. And so the matrices also form a norm linear space. So we have now sufficient amount of number of examples of norm linear spaces to discuss with. And while we go ahead, we will also accumulate more and more examples. For example, there's nothing I have said in terms of complex numbers, but you can soon, we'll see that you can accumulate certain analytic functions and they also form a vector space that you already know. And there also you can define a norm. So plenty of more examples can be defined. And that's where this area is containing a lot of examples. It's very vast, right?
Sir?
Yeah.
So what we did here was mapping the mapping the current spaces to another space in which we already know norms, right? Like
yes.
In this case, we are mapping to R power n square. Sorry, Rn square.
Yes.
Like we can do that for any unknown space to any known space, but I was thinking, what conditions do we need to enforce on the function?
A very good question. Can somebody answer?
My basic thought, I thought invertibility is necessary, I guess.
Good, good. Of course, you should not be losing something. So it should be invertibility is 1. Means it's, you want saying that 1, 1 and on 2 should be there.
Yeah.
I should be able to go forward and then I should be able to come back. That's fine. But anything more? Can somebody answer? What more you expect?
Linearity also.
See, you are defining a norm only on vector spaces. So you are going from one vector space to the other vector space. So whether you add and take a norm here, or you go there and take a addition, that should be same. So the map that we are discussing has to be linear, 1, 1, also onto. At least in the case of finite dimension.
Is that sufficient?
For the finite dimensional, it is sufficient. Okay, we'll see that. Okay, so for finite dimensional, this is more than sufficient. Okay. In fact, in your linear algebra, have you learned if there is a map which is going from V to V, if it is 1, 1, it is on. How many of you learned? Is the question clear? If T is a linear map between V to V, and if T is a finite dimensional vector space V, and if T is 1, 1, then it is onto. Rank nullity theorem. Okay. So whether you want to, you don't need even 1, 1 and onto. 1, 1 will give you onto. Okay. Invertibility is also equivalent to this. So 1, 1 is same as onto is same as invertibility in the case of linear maps. So for finite dimensional cases between two vector spaces, if they are of same dimension, 1, 1 means onto. But if they are different dimension, of course you want 1, 1 and onto, something will be left out. So you will restrict to only the range. Standard process that whenever we go ahead. It will create an onto map to the range, and at least on the range you want it to be 1. That's what you will expect. Okay. Datta, is it answered?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now I will take another 3-4 minutes before going for the discussion to quickly get into something new based on this. We will accumulate more examples when we go along. But this is an important thing. See, so far we looked at vector space and on which you can define a notion of length, a generalized notion of length called norm. But this is something familiar. The moment you say that some notion of length you are saying, there is already you have learned what is called metric spaces. So what this metric space, it's actually a set on which you can actually define a distance function called D, which has number of properties. Just so recall. So recall the definition of the metric. Distance between X and Y should be same as distance between Y and X. Distance between any 2 points has to be bigger than or equal to 0. And the distance between X and Y should be less than or equal to going through some other point. Distance between X and Z and Y. So if you go directly, it will be smaller distance than going via any other point. So the triangle inequality, definiteness. If distance between X and Y is 0, then X has to be equal to Y. So this is the definition of a metric space. And now what we want to look at is that if I have a nonlinear space, is there any way that directly I can define a metric? So we are given X. Now in this case, it's a vector space, and I'm saying nonlinear space. Okay. Now, can we define a norm? And the answer to this, you might have, do you know an answer? You might have come across this. How do you define the distance between 2 points in real number? What is the distance between X and Y? What is the natural metric? Yeah, Neha?
So on X, we can define as dxy is norm X minus Y.
Okay. In the case of modulus, you will write it as modulus of X minus Y. So these choices, in this case, I'm using this. Correct. So for all X and Y, in this vector space. Okay. So first question we can quickly answer it. That is it true that now you can check whether this is actually a metric, and that's easy. Okay. So I leave it for you to check that. So when I'm leaving, these are all small things, but it will help you to recollect the definition properly. It recollects the definition of both the metric as well as norm. So please be pay attention and try to do this. So this creates a metric, and hence it automatically becomes a metric space. So this D which is coming out of this norm is called the metric induced by the norm. So it's called metric induced by the norm. Okay. Or sometimes it's called it's norm induced metric. Okay, so the context will make it clear what do we mean by that, and hence every norm-linear space is actually a metric space. So if I want to call this D is coming from the norm, you can use a suffix as this, but it's not really necessary. So every norm-linear space is a metric space. One can ask the question that whether every metric space is a norm-linear space, the other way question, and the answer is immediately no, because I can define a metric on any set. It need not be a vector space, but to speak about the norm-linear space, it has to be a vector space, and hence from now onwards the discussion is you have a norm-linear space and we are having a metric with respect to this metric, how it behaves. That means you have a metric on a vector space coming out of the norm, and we want to look at number of properties. What are the two important objects that we want to the moment you define metric, what are the few things that you want to discuss? What are the notions that one would immediately look at the moment you define a metric? The moment you define a metric, it gives you something. What was that? Vijay, you have any answer? Oh, yeah. If you can speak, it's fine. Otherwise, it's okay. I think you have network issue. Right, it's okay. Anybody else? What are the notion that? Yeah.
You can define open and closed sets.
Correct. So you can, the moment you have metric, it gives you a topology. So you can decide about balls. What are the open balls? What are the closed balls? So I'll just define and then we'll start with exercise. So all that I'm asking is the following. So you can define ball centered at some x of radius r. So what is this? All those elements in the vector space such that the distance between y and x is less than r. Or if you want to write this in metric space language, it is this is how you define ball. Similarly, one can define closed ball, which is you can also rewrite in terms of norm. Okay, so this is called an open ball. This is called a closed ball. Okay. What is an important ball that we should always be very clear about? It's the unit ball. So what is the unit ball? It is B of, since it is a vector space, I know there is 0 and then 1. Okay, so this one as well as this one. Now here comes the exercise, and we'll. Is it clear that the open ball is subset of the closed ball? See, I'm just calling right now with it's just a term, something called open and closed. We have not yet said what do you mean by open or closed. With respect to some topology or with respect to some metric only, we can speak about that. So first questions are whether these open balls are open, whether the closed balls are closed is the first question. But here is the exercise with that we want to stop and then we can go for discussion, is that make sure this B01, both open as well as closed, you completely understand completely understand. By that I mean at least set-wise, rigorously, as well as some kind of geometrically about all the examples. Is the question clear? So you should know what is B01 in Rn with one norm. You should know what is B01 in the norm-linear space Rn with two norm, or any P norm, or infinite norm, and B01 in C of AB with subnorm, and B01 in CAB with one norm, or B01 in LP space, B01 in sequence space, LP space. So all these things you have to take it. So this I give it as longer weekend thinking assignment. Take time to understand, and this is crucial. Crucial in the sense that whenever we speak, there should be some abstract idea of what we are actually dealing with. Later we may speak about maps between the sequence space to one sequence space to other sequence space. And when we want to say, we want to check what is the image of this open ball there, then we should be clear about what do we mean by the open ball. We have already done that when we are defining C of AB in some sense to find out what are the elements of norm 1. I asked you to do that. Now it is asking less than or equal to 1 as well as less than 1 and less than or equal to 1. So take this as this weekend assignment for you to go through, thinking assignment.